Investors are getting more and more greedy as Bitcoin breaks 41,000 for the first time in a couple weeks. The market is slowly reeling back from uncertainty from the war overseas, as well as the crypto executive order that was just announced. And Ethereum founder Vitalik Buterin shares his thoughts on the Web3 ecosystem as we know it today. In a tell-all-time article, we're going to break that down and more in this episode of Blockchain Boss. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the podcast. My name is Bon Jin. On this podcast, we talk everything Web3, cryptocurrency news, blockchain, NFTs, basically just the infrastructure of this technological space as it is occurring. I like to focus a lot on education, educating people on basically the essence of what this technology is and what it can do for the world. Like I said, my name is Bon Jin. You probably know me from TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, one of those things. Thank you for listening to the podcast. A little bit about me. I started a website called blockchainboss.io. It's basically a Web3 education hub. You can go check that out if you want after the show. But first, we're going to hop into a little bit of market watch. Like I said, the market is kind of recovering a little bit because, we're kind of reeling back from the executive order. Like I covered in my newsletter, if you're not part of that, hop on over to bonjen.io, bonjenn.io, and you can join that for free. Every week I send out a Web3 newsletter, basically my research for the week. Anyway, in that newsletter, I was basically breaking down the crypto executive order and how it's going to affect the industry. And I was giving my thoughts, saying that I think that a little bit of regulation is good for the cryptocurrency community as a whole, because me and a lot of other people ultimately want crypto to become mainstream. We want crypto to be pretty much the de facto payment system for a lot of things, and we can't really get there without regulation. Some people disagree with me. That's okay, because they said that that is ultimately against the essence of crypto to be like outside of the control of a government. But let's be honest, you need a little bit of regulation in order for the government to accept it. Bitcoin in its essence, Ethereum, if they're stored correctly, are still outside of the control of a government. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out some of my education videos on TikTok or YouTube, and I break that down for you. But anyway, back to the market. Bitcoin is pulling the market up slowly. Like I said, everything is reacting to that executive order and also the conflict going on overseas. So Bitcoin is finally over $41,000. I forgot to say the cryptocurrency market today as a whole on March 21st, Monday at 9 a.m. is 0.9% up increase over the previous day with a $1.88 trillion market cap. This is according to coinmarketcap.com. So like I said, Bitcoin is at $41,000 with Ethereum also being pulled up to $2,900. We will see maybe next week, maybe Bitcoin can be around 43 and maybe Ethereum can finally break that $3,000. BNB at $3.98, XRP at 81 cents, Terra at 95, Cardano at 91 cents, Solana at $89, and Avalanche at $88, followed by Polkadot at 18.91 and Dogecoin at 11 cents. So the market's slowly recovering. People are getting a little bit more greedy. We're going to hop on over to the Crypto Fear and Greed Index. If you guys aren't aware what the Crypto Fear and Greed Index is, it's basically a chart, and each day it analyzes the emotions and sentiments from different sources and crunches them into one single number. Hence the Fear and Greed Index. When the market is in extreme fear, everybody is selling off because they are afraid, and when it's green, that means that the price of Bitcoin is going high and investors are very greedy. Me personally, I only buy when we are in fear or extreme fear. And today, as of March 21st, 9:15 a.m., we are now sitting at a 30 on the fear scale. That is an increase from last week at 23 extreme fear, and last month 25 extreme fear. So we're kind of recovering from like kind of like a fear, like kind of a lot of people were saying it's a bear market, but I don't know. The market's just reacting to what's going on in the world. Hopefully you bought the dip. Once again, this is not financial advice, but if you're one of those guys that's buying at 65 and then selling at 40, you're playing the game wrong. And if you're selling your Bitcoin at all, then what are you doing? If you truly understand the essence of Bitcoin, you wouldn't sell at all, in my humble opinion. So yeah, that's the market today. It's looking pretty okay. It's still kind of yellow, reddish, a little bit of recovery, but you know, that's the beauty of the market. It's volatile. People get in, people get out. And when I say people, I mean institutions, because, you know, most of the money moving in and out of crypto right now are banks and institutional investors. Retail is barely the tip of the iceberg here. When I say retail, I mean people like you and me buying cryptocurrency on something like Coinbase. Speaking of Coinbase, quick ad break here. Coinbase is giving away $5 of free Bitcoin to anybody who signs up with my link, blockchainboss.io/free Bitcoin. $5 of free Bitcoin just for signing up. You don't even need to buy, like, you don't even need to put in money or anything. They just give you the free Bitcoin. It's crazy. Yeah, $5 in free Bitcoin. Hopping over to blockchainboss.io/free Bitcoin to get your $5 in free Bitcoin. Okay, now back to the show. So this week, Time Magazine did a pretty interesting piece on Vitalik Buterin. I was going through the article because I was going to pick out bits and pieces of it because I wanted to basically give my thoughts on it. But I ended up picking out most of the article because it was pretty interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the entire article, and I'm going to pause sometimes to basically share my thoughts, and because I didn't agree with a lot of stuff what he said, but also I didn't create Ethereum, so who cares? So yeah. Also, before I get into this, I want to thank everybody for listening to the show. And when I say everybody, I mean like the 3 or 4 people that listen. Well, we got some people in some random countries. Like I think a Polish listener, someone from a country called Oman. Never even heard of that because I'm just an America boy. But thank you for listening. Thank you for the show. I mean, thank you for the support. If you're listening, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube. Also, thank you for 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Like, truly, that's great. It took me like 5 or 6 months to get to 1,000. My most viewed video on my YouTube channel, I think it has like 20,000, almost 21,000 views right now. I say I had 25 subscribers then, so that's crazy to see where that's going. So yeah, go subscribe to YouTube. Just look up Bonjin, it'll come up. So TikTok too. TikTok's like at 94,000 or something. So yeah, let's get into the show, guys. Let's hop on into this article. Let me go ahead and pull it up for y'all. Yeah. All right, this is from Time. This is by Andrew R. Chow. He's in Denver. So yeah, he's painting the picture for us here. Let's hop in. In a few minutes, oh, by the way, this is called "The Man Behind Ethereum is Worried About Crypto's Future." And in this article, they refer to him as the Prince of Crypto. I think that's really ick. I don't like that. In a few minutes, electronic music will start pulsing. Stuffed animals will be flung through the air. Women will emerge spinning Technicolor hula hoops. And a mechanical bull will rev into action, bucking off one delighted rider after another. It's the closing party of ETH Denver, a week-long cryptocurrency conference dedicated to the blockchain Ethereum. Lines have stretched around the block for days. Now, on this Sunday night in February, the giddy energy is peaking. You know, I gotta say, I'm not a huge fan of the Web3 culture with all of the, like, events and the, like, animal costumes. I kind of distance myself from that. I just like the tech. But that's just me. Back to the article. But as the crowd pushes aside, a wiry man with elfin features is springing out of the venue, past astonished selfie takers and venture capitalists. Some call out, imploring him to stay. Others even chase him down the street, on foot, on scooters, yet the man outruns them all, disappearing into the privacy of his hotel lobby alone. Vitalik Buterin, the most influential person in crypto, didn't come to Denver to party. He doesn't drink or particularly enjoy crowds. Not that there isn't plenty for the 28-year-old creator of Ethereum to celebrate. 9 years ago, Buterin dreamed up Ethereum as a way to leverage the blockchain technology underlying Bitcoin for all sorts of uses beyond currency. Since then, it has emerged as the bedrock layer of what advocates say will be the new open-source decentralized internet. I agree with that. Ether, the platform's native currency, has become the biggest second cryptocurrency behind Bitcoin, powering a $1 trillion ecosystem that rivals Visa in terms of the money it moves. So yeah, like I always explain to beginners, the biggest difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum is Bitcoin is just a currency, just like money, right? Store of value. And Ethereum is a platform with the currency Ether on it, and Ether allows you to do things on the platform. Ethereum has brought thousands of unbanked people around the world into financial systems, allowed capital to flow unencumbered across borders, and provided the infrastructure for entrepreneurs to build all sorts of new products, from payment systems to prediction markets, digital swap meets to medical research hubs. But even as crypto has soared in value and volume, Buterin has watched the world he created evolve with a mixture of pride and dread. Ethereum has made a handful of white men unfathomably rich, pumped pollutants into the air, and emerged as a vehicle for tax evasion, money laundering, and mind-boggling scams. Crypto itself has a lot of dystopian potential if implemented wrong, the Russian-born Canadian explains the morning after the party in an 80-minute interview in his hotel room. Buterin worries about the dangers to overeager investors, the soaring transaction fees, and the shameless displays of wealth that have come to dominate the public perception of crypto. I gotta say, there is nothing like a rich crypto nerd. There's nothing like it. It's like something it's beyond anything I've ever seen. You just take a nerd that has like no social skills and then give them millions of dollars, and now they're just a rich person with no social skills. Still super smart, but it's crazy. It's kind of funny, actually. The peril is you have $3 million, and this is from Buterin, and I completely agree with him on this point. NFT culture is lame. It's so dumb. It's the biggest bubble. A lot of people are going to get hurt. Those monkey pictures aren't worth what they... Ugh, God. Well, you'll see. Watch. This is coming from the man himself. Quote, the peril is you have these $3 million monkeys and it becomes a different kind of gambling, he says, referring to the Bored Ape Yacht Club, the uber popular NFT collection of garnished primate cartoons that has become a digital age status symbol for millionaires including Jimmy Fallon and Paris Hilton, and which have traded for more than $1 million a pop. Quote, there definitely are lots of people that are just buying yachts and Lambos, end quote. Buterin hopes Ethereum will become the launchpad for all sorts of socio-political experimentation, fair voting systems, urban planning, universal basic income, public works projects. Above all, he wants the platform to be a counterweight to authoritarian governments and to upend Silicon Valley's stranglehold over our digital lives. But he acknowledges that his vision for the transformative power of Ethereum is at risk of being overtaken by greed, and so he has reluctantly begun to take on a bigger public role in shaping its future. If we don't exercise our voice, the only things that get built are the things that are immediately profitable, he says. Reedy voice rising and falling as he fidgets his hands and sticks his toes between the cushions of a lumpy gray couch. And those are often far from what's actually the best for the world. How come every rich person, like really wealthy person, always has to like not wear shoes when they get interviewed? Imagine that level of comfort. Like, you're just so comfortable. You have all that money, and you're just like, I'm going to take my shoes off during an interview. That's the difference between rich and wealthy. Shoes off in an interview. Gary Vee does it. Who ironically got uber rich from NFTs. Back to the article. The irony is that despite all of Buterin's cachet, he may not have the ability... I don't know that word. Cachet? He may not have the ability to prevent Ethereum from veering off course. That's because he designed it as a decentralized platform responsive not only to his own vision, but also to the will of its builders, investors, and ever-sprawling community. The essence of crypto. This guy created Ethereum, but he can't control it because it's decentralized. Love that. Buterin is not the formal leader of Ethereum, and he fundamentally rejects the idea that anyone should hold unilateral power over its future. Yes, this guy gets it. Which has left Buterin reliant on the limited tools of soft power, writing blog posts, giving interviews, conducting research, speaking at conferences, where many attendees just want to bask in the glow of their newfound riches. I've been yelling a lot, and sometimes that yelling feels like howling into the wind, he says, his eyes darting across the room. Whether or not his approach works and how much sway Buterin over his own brainchild may be the difference between a future in which Ethereum becomes the basis of a new era of digital life, and one in which is just another instrument of financial speculation, credit default swaps, and utopian patina. 3 days after the music stops at ETH Denver, Buterin's attention turns across the world, back to the region where he was born. In the war launched by Russian President Vladimir Putin, cryptocurrency almost immediately became a tool of Ukrainian resistance. I actually made a TikTok about this, saying that this was crypto's chance, to prove itself, to do, what it was made to do, be a payment system that isn't controlled by a government, and largely it's been able to do that. More than $100 million in crypto was raised in the invasion's first 3 weeks for the Ukrainian government and NGOs. Cryptocurrency has also provided a lifeline for some fleeing Ukrainians whose banks are inaccessible. At the same time, regulators worry that it will be used by Russian oligarchs to evade sanctions. Yes, and that's also true. I also made a video saying that Bitcoin is neutral. It doesn't care what's going on in the world. It doesn't care who's evil and who's good. It's just there to be used by whomever, which kind of sucks and it's kind of good, but you know. Buterin has sprung into action too, matching hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants toward relief efforts and publicly lambasting Putin's decision to invade. Quote, one silver lining of the situation is in the last few weeks is that it has reminded a lot of people in the crypto space that ultimately the goal of crypto is not to play games with multi-million-dollar pictures of monkeys. It's to do things that accomplish meaningful effects in the real world, Buterin wrote in an email to Time on March 14th. His outspoken advocacy marks a change for a leader who has been slow to find his political voice. One of the decisions I made in 2022 is to try to become a more risk-taking and less natural, Buterin says. I would rather Ethereum offend some people than turn into something that stands for nothing. The war is personal to Buterin, who has both Russian and Ukrainian ancestry. He was born outside Moscow in 1994 to two computer scientists, Dmitry Buterin and Italian Ameline. A few years after the fall of the Soviet Union, monetary and social systems had collapsed. His mother's parents lost their life savings amid rising inflation. Growing up in the USSR, I didn't realize most of the stuff I'd been told in school that was good, like communism, was all propaganda, explains Dmitry. So I wanted Vitalik to question conventions and beliefs, and he grew up very independent as a thinker. The family initially lived in a university dorm room with a shared bathroom. There were no disposable diapers available, so his parents washed his by hand. Vitalik grew up in a turbulent teeming mind. Dmitry says Vitalik learned how to read before he could sleep through the night and was slow to form sentences compared to his peers. Because his mind was going so fast, Dmitry recalls, it was actually hard for him to express himself verbally for some time. Instead, Vitalik gravitated to the clarity of numbers. At 4, he inherited his parents' old IBM computer and started playing around with Excel spreadsheets. At 7, he could recite more than 100 digits of pi and would shout out math equations to pass the time. By 12, he was coding inside Microsoft Office Suite. The precocious child's isolation from his peers had been exacerbated by a move to Toronto in 2000, the same year Putin was first elected. His father characterizes Vitalik's Canadian upbringing as lucky and naive. Vitalik himself uses the words lonely and disconnected. In 2011, Dmitry introduced Vitalik to Bitcoin, which had been created in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis. After seeing the collapse of financial systems in both Russia and the US, Dmitry was intrigued by the idea of an alternative global money source that was uncontrolled by authorities. Vitalik soon began writing articles exploring the new technology for the magazine Bitcoin Weekly, for which he earned 5 Bitcoins a pop. Back then, $4 today would be worth about 200 grand. As a teenager, Vitalik Buterin proved to be a pithy writer, able to articulate complex ideas about cryptocurrency and its underlying technology in clear prose. At 18, he co-founded Bitcoin Magazine and became its lead writer, earning a following both in Toronto and abroad. A lot of people think of him as a typical techie engineer, says Nathan Schneider, a media studies professor at the University of Colorado Boulder, who first interviewed Buterin in 2014. But a core of his practice, even more so, is observation and writing, and that helped him see a cohesive vision that others weren't seeing yet. As Buterin learned more about the blockchain technology on which Bitcoin was built, he began to believe using it purely for currency was a waste. The blockchain, he thought, could serve as an efficient method for securing all sorts of assets: web applications, organizations, financial derivatives, non-predatory loan programs, even wills. Each of these could be operated by smart contracts, code that could be programmed to carry out transactions without the need for intermediaries. A decentralized version of the rideshare industry, for example, could be built to send money directly from passengers to drivers without Uber swiping a cut of the proceeds. In 2013, Buterin dropped out of college and wrote a 36-page white paper laying out his vision for Ethereum, a new open-source blockchain on which programmers could build any sort of application they wish. Buterin swiped the name from a Wikipedia list of elements from science fiction. He sent it to friends in the Bitcoin community who passed it around. Soon a handful of programmers and businessmen around the world sought Buterin in hopes of helping him bring it to life. Within months, a group of 8 men who became known as Ethereum's founders were sharing a 3-story Airbnb in Switzerland, writing code and wooing investors. While some of the other founders mixed work and play, watching Game of Thrones, persuading friends to bring over beer in exchange for Ether IOUs, Buterin mostly kept to himself, coding away on his laptop according to Laura Shen's recent book about the history of Ethereum, The Cryptopians. Over time, it became apparent that the group had very different plans for the nascent technology. Buterin wanted a decentralized open platform on which anyone could build anything. Others wanted to use the technology to create a business. One idea was to build the crypto equivalent to Google, in which Ethereum would use customer data to sell targeted ads. The men also squabbled over power and titles. One co-founder, Charles Hoskinson, appointed himself CEO, a designation that was of no interest to Buterin, who joked that the title would be C-3PO after the droid from Star Wars. If you guys don't know, Charles Hoskinson is the founder of Cardano, an Ethereum competitor that uses the proof of stake consensus method as opposed to Ethereum's proof of work consensus method. Back to the article, the ensuing conflicts left Buterin with culture shock. In the space of a few months, he had gone from a cloistered life of writing code and technical articles to that of a decision maker grappling with bloated egos and power struggles. His vision for Ethereum hung in the balance. Quote, the biggest divide was definitely that a lot of the people cared about making money. For me, that was totally not my goal, says Buterin, whose net worth is at least $800 million, according to the public records of the blockchain, whose accuracy was confirmed by a spokesperson. There were even times at the beginning where I was negotiating down the percentages of the Ether distribution that both myself and other top-level founders would get in order to be more egalitarian. That did make them upset, end quote. Buterin says that the other founders tried to take advantage of his naivete to push through their own ideas about how Ethereum should run. People use my fear of regulators against me, he recalls, saying that we should have a for-profit entity because it's so much simpler legally than making a non-profit. As tensions rose, the group employed Buterin to make a decision. In June 2014, he asked Hoskinson and Amir Charit, two co-founders who were pushing Ethereum to become a business, to leave the group. He then set in motion the creation of Ethereum Foundation, a nonprofit established to safeguard Ethereum's infrastructure and fund research and development projects. One by one, all the founders peeled off and over the next few years to pursue their own projects, either in tandem with Ethereum or as direct competitors. Some of them remain critical of Buterin's approach. Quote, in the dichotomy between centralization and anarchy, Ethereum seems to be going toward anarchy, quote, says Hoskinson, who now leads his own blockchain, Cardano. Quote, we think there's a middle ground to create some sort of blockchain-based governance system, end quote. With the founders splintered, Buterin emerged as Ethereum's philosophical leader. He had a seat on the EF board and the clout to shape industry trends and to move markets with his public announcements. He even became known as V-God in China, but he didn't exactly step up to the power vacuum. Quote, he's not good at bossing people around, says Miyaguchi, the executive director of the EF. From a social navigation perspective, he was immature. He's probably still conflict averse, says Danny Ryan, a lead researcher at the EF. Buterin calls his struggle to inhabit the role of an organizational leader by curse for the first few years of Ethereum. It's not hard to see why. Buterin still doesn't present stereotypical leadership qualities when you meet him. He sniffles and stutters through his sentences, walks stiffly, and struggles to hold eye contact. He puts almost no effort into his clothing, mostly wearing Uniqlo tees or garments gifted to him by friends. His disheveled appearance has made him an easy target on social media. He recently shared insults from online hecklers who said he looked like a Bond villain or an alien crackhead. Love Vitalik, but bro, maybe lift some weights. Yeah. Yet almost everyone who has a full conversation with Buterin comes away starry-eyed. Buterin is wryly funny and almost wholly devoid of pretension or ego. He's unabashed geek whose eyes spark when he alights upon one of his favorite concepts, whether it be quadratic voting or the governance system futurarchy. Just as Ethereum is designed to be an everything machine, Buterin is an everything thinker, fluent in disciplines ranging from sociological theory to advanced calculus to land tax history. He's currently using Duolingo to learn his 5th and 6th languages. He doesn't talk down to people, and he eschews a security detail. An emotional part of me says that once you start going down that way, professionalizing is just another way for losing your soul, he says. Alexis Ohanian, the co-founder of Reddit and a major crypto investor, says being around Buterin gives him a similar vibe to when I first got to know Sir Tim Berners-Lee, inventor of the World Wide Web. He's very thoughtful and unassuming, Ohanian says, and he's giving the world some of the most powerful Legos it's ever seen. For years, Buterin has been grappling with how much power to exercise in Ethereum's decentralized ecosystem. The first major test came in 2016 when a For people that don't know, this is the story between Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. For years, Buterin has been grappling with how much power to exercise in Ethereum's decentralized ecosystem. The first major test came in 2016 when a newly created Ethereum-based fundraising body called the DAO was hacked for $60 million, which amounted at the time to more than 4% of all Ether in circulation. The hack tested the crypto community's values. If they truly believe no central authority should override the code governing smart contracts, then thousands of investors would simply have to eat the loss, which could in turn encourage more hackers. On the other hand, Buterin chose to reverse the hack using a maneuver called a hard fork. He would be wielding the same kind of central authority as the financial systems he sought to replace. Buterin took a middle ground. He consulted with other Ethereum leaders, wrote blog posts advocating for the hard fork, and watched as the community voted overwhelmingly in favor of that option via forums and petitions. When Ethereum developers created the fork, users and miners had the option to stick with the hacked version of the blockchain, but they overwhelmingly chose the forked version, and Ethereum quickly recovered in value. To Buterin, the DAO hack epitomized the promise of a decentralized approach to governance. Leadership has to rely much more on soft power and less more on hard power, so leaders have to actually take into account the feelings of the community and treat them with respect, he says. Leadership positions aren't fixed, so if leaders stop performing, the world forgets about them. And the converse is that it's very easy for new leaders to rise up. Over the past few years, countless leaders have risen up in Ethereum, building all kinds of products, tokens, and subcultures. There was the ICO boom of 2017, in which venture capitalists raised billions of dollars for blockchain projects. There was DeFi summer in 2020, in which the new trading mechanisms and derivative structures sent money whizzing around the world at hyperspeed. And there was last year's explosion of NFTs, tradable digital goods like profile pictures, art collections, and sport cards that skyrocketed in value. So every little mini events, NFTs for example, basically pumps up Ethereum. So, it's pretty easy to spot this stuff. But before we continue, let's hop in with a quick advertisement. Our friends over at Webull are giving away 5 free stocks for the month of March only, just for signing up for Webull and depositing money. Only 1 penny is needed to get your 5 free stocks. So head on over to blockchainboss.io/free stocks. That's blockchainboss.io/free stock to get your 5 free stocks when signing up for Webull and depositing only 1 cent. Now let's get back into the podcast. But their volume has overwhelmed the network, leading to a steep rise in congestion and fees, in which, for instance, bidders trying to secure a rare NFT pay hundreds of dollars extra to make sure their transactions are expedited. This is the worst part about Ethereum. I've said this before, and it's all because of the proof of work consensus method. The transaction fees are ridiculous. $200 transaction fees to pull out $30. It certainly makes the barrier for entry way higher than something like Binance or Polkadot or something. But hopefully they fix that with that new consensus method. But we've been waiting for years, Vitalik. What's up, bro? He actually talks about that here in this article. The fees have undermined some of Buterin's favorite projects on the blockchain. Take Proof of Humanity, which awards a universal basic income, currently about $40 per month, to anyone who signs up. Depending on the week, the network's congestion fees can make pulling money out of your wallet to pay for basic needs prohibitively expensive. With fees being the way they are today, Buterin said, it's really to the point where the financial derivatives of the gambling stuff start pricing out some of the cool stuff. Inequities have crept into crypto in other waves, including a stark lack of gender and racial diversity. It's been among the things that I put a lot of intellectual effort into, Buterin admits, of gender parity. The ecosystem does need to improve there. He's scornful of the dominance of coin voting, a voting process of the DAOs that Buterin feels is just a new version of plutocracy, one in which wealthy venture capitalists can make self-interested decisions with little resistance. It's become a de facto standard in which is a dystopia I've been seeing unfold over the past few years, he says. That's interesting that he, the founder of Ethereum, is not a fan of crypto voting. If you guys aren't aware what I'm talking about, if there's a DAO and there's a cryptocurrency for the DAO, a token, the person holding the most token gets the most voting power in terms of the direction of the DAO. So theoretically, the richest person could have the most influence, just like today. So our boy Vitalik isn't for that. These problems have sparked a backlash both inside and outside the blockchain community as crypto rockets toward the mainstream. Its esoteric jargon, idiosyncratic culture, and financial excesses have been met with widespread disdain. Meanwhile, frustrated users are decamping to newer blockchains like Solana and BNB Chain, driven by the prospect of lower transaction fees, alternative building tools, or different philosophical values. We've been seeing a mass exodus to these blockchains because Ethereum prices are just way too high and it's unusable. No one wants to build anything or use anything on Ethereum if it's $200 to test it. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we got to fix those fees. Buterin understands why people are moving away from Ethereum. Unlike virtually any other leader in a trillion-dollar industry, he says he's fine with it, especially given for that Ethereum's current problems stem from the fact that it has too many users. Losing immense riches doesn't faze him much either. Last year, he dumped $6 billion worth of Shiba Inu tokens that were gifted to him, explaining that he wanted to give some to charity, help maintain the meme coin's value, and surrender his role as a locus of power. In the meantime, he and the EF, which hold almost $1 billion worth of Ether in reserve, a representative confirmed, are taking several approaches to improve the ecosystem. Last year, they handed out $27 million to Ethereum-based project, up from $7.7 million in 2019, to recipients including smart contract developers and an educational conference in Lagos. The EF research team is also working on 2 crucial technical updates. This is where they talk about Ethereum 2.0, which is no longer called Ethereum 2.0, by the way. I don't know if you heard. And it's basically the consensus method transfer from proof of work to proof of stake. Okay, back to the article. The EF research team is also working on 2 crucial technical updates. The first is known as the merge, which converts Ethereum from proof of work to a form of blockchain verification to proof of stake, which I just said, which the EF says will reduce Ethereum's energy usage by more than 99%. That's also a huge thing for Ethereum haters, is that it uses too much energy, just like our boy Bitcoin. And make the network more secure. Buterin has been stumping for proof of stake since Ethereum's founding, but repeated delays have turned implementation into a waiting for Godot style drama. Godot. I'm not into these nerd examples because like I'm the coolest person ever. Just kidding. If you're into Bitcoin at all, you're a nerd. I'm sorry. Like, we just got to accept it. At ETH Denver, the EF researcher Danny Ryan declared that the merge would happen in the next 6 months unless, quote, something insanely catastrophic happens. The next day, Buterin encouraged companies worried about the environmental impact to delay using Ethereum until the merge is completed, even if it gets delayed until 2025. Is he saying that it's not going to happen? In January, Moxie Marlinspike, co-founder of the messaging app Signal, wrote a widely read critique noting that despite its collectivist mantras, so-called Web3 was already coalescing around centralist platforms. As he often does when faced with legitimate criticism, Buterin responded with a thoughtful, detailed post on Reddit. Quote, "The properly authenticated decentralized blockchain world is coming and is much closer to being here than many people think," he wrote. "I see no technical reason why the future needs to look like the status quo today." Buterin is aware that crypto's utopian promises sound stale to many and calls the race to implement sharding in the face of a competition a ticking time bomb. If we don't have sharding fast enough, then people just might start migrating to more centralized solutions, he says. After all that stuff happens and it still centralizes, then yes, there's a much stronger argument that there's a big problem. What is Vitalik possibly talking about here? Well, he's probably talking about the fact that a lot of these projects that are supposed to be decentralized in essence are becoming centralized because they're being controlled by a central party. So he sees in the future there's no reason why things could become more decentralized, but hopefully that's the case. If not, then it's just going to be like the world is today, or the internet is today. Highly centralized, controlled by a couple companies like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft in terms of cloud computing and infrastructure. Back to the article. As the technical kinks get worked out, Buterin has turned his attention toward larger socio-political issues he thinks the blockchain might solve. On his blog and Twitter, you'll find treatises on housing, on voting systems, on the best way to distribute public goods, on city building and longevity research. While Buterin spent much of the pandemic living in Singapore, he increasingly lives as a digital nomad, writing dispatches from the road. Those who know Buterin well have noticed a philosophical shift over the years. He's gone on a journey from being more sympathetic to anarcho-capitalist thinking to Georges-type thinking, says Glenn Whale, an economist who was one of his close collaborators, referring to a theory that holds the value of the commons should belong equally to all members of society. One of Buterin's recent posts called for the creation of a new type of NFT based not on monetary values but on participation and identity. For instance, the allocation of votes in an organization might be determined by the commitment an individual has shown to the group as opposed to the number of tokens they own. NFTs can represent much more of who you are and not just what you can afford, he writes. While Buterin's blog is one of the main tools of public persuasion, his posts aren't meant to be decrees, but rather intellectual explorations and that invite debate. Buterin often dissects the flaws of obscure ideas he once wrote effectively about, like Harburger taxes. His blog is a model for how a leader can work through complex ideas with transparency and rigor, expressing the messy process of intellectual growth for all to see and perhaps learn from. Some of Buterin's more radical ideas can provoke alarm. In January, he caused a minor outrage on Twitter by advocating for synthetic wombs, which he argued could reduce the pay gap between men and women. He predicts there's a decent chance someone born today will live to be 3,000 and takes the anti-diabetes medication metformin in the hope of slowing his body's aging, despite mixed studies of the drug's efficacy. As governmental bodies prepare to wade into crypto, in March, President Biden signed an executive order seeking a federal plan to regulate digital assets. Buterin has increasingly been sought out by politicians. At ETH Denver, he had a private conversation with Colorado Governor Jared Polis, a Democrat who supports cryptocurrencies. Buterin is anxious about crypto's political valence in the U.S., where Republicans have generally been more eager to embrace it. There's definitely signs that are making it seem like crypto is on the verge of becoming a right-leaning thing, Buterin says. If it does happen, we'll sacrifice a lot of potential it has to offer. To Buterin, the worst-case scenario for the future of crypto is that blockchain technology ends up concentrated in the hands of dictatorial governments. He's unhappy with El Salvador's rollout of Bitcoin as legal tender, which has been riddled with identity theft and volatility. The prospect of governments using the technology to crack down on dissent is one reason Buterin is adamant about crypto remaining decentralized. He sees the technology as the most powerful equalizer to surveillance technology deployed by governments like China's and powerful companies like Meta alike. If Mark Zuckerberg shouldn't have the power to make epic-changing decisions to control users' data for profit, Buterin believes, then neither should he, even if that limits his ability to shape the future of his creation, sends some people to other blockchains, or allows others to use his platform in unsavory ways. Quote, I would love to have an ecosystem that has lots of good crazy and bad crazy, Buterin says. Bad crazy is when there's just huge amounts of money being drained and all it's doing is subsidizing the hacker industry. Good crazy is when there's tech work and research and development and public goods coming out at the other end. So there's this battle, and we have to be intentional and make sure more of the right things happen. So here are my thoughts. It's interesting that Vitalik is like this, and I'm very glad he is like this. I'm very glad he's very transparent with his thinking. I'm very glad that he basically corrects his old ways of thinking when he doesn't agree with his old self anymore. He's very open about his thought process on his blog, very open about his ideas, very against a centralized Ethereum in any way, because this guy could literally step in and literally control this whole thing at any time, but he's not like that. I think it was interesting how his dad grew up in the USSR and he didn't. So I'm sure this war overseas is very personal to him. And also, I think it's interesting how he thinks that if crypto becomes right-leaning, that will be bad. Maybe, I don't know if he's a Democrat or what, maybe means if it leans in any direction, it could be bad. And I love how he's against centralization. So, yeah, basically, we learned a stance on the current Web3 structure. He's against he's against centralization. He wants no control over it. He doesn't really want to be seen as a thought leader, but he feels like he has to step into that role sometimes when things get a little too crazy. Anyway, guys, I just wanted to share that with you. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you learned something about Vitalik Buterin. I definitely learned some stuff for sure. Couple announcements. Thank you for be sure to check out my weekly newsletter, Bonjin at bonjin.io. Bon at bonjin.io. I send out cryptocurrency news. I send out Web3 research every week, so be sure to hop on that. Also, subscribe to me on YouTube and TikTok, BONJENN on both, and find me on Instagram and all that good stuff. Also on Twitter, too. I think I have an underscore. And yeah, that's basically the episode. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.